My fiancé disappeared 2 weeks before our wedding for his bachelor party, only to return just days before the wedding and surprised to find it canceled. I, a 24-year-old woman, was supposed to get married 3 days ago, but had to cancel everything because Marcus, my fiancé, also 24, did something really horrible. We've been together for the past 5 years, since college, and earlier this year, we got engaged. We were very happy together, and I was super excited about the wedding, until 2 weeks ago. Everything suddenly changed because one morning, when I woke up, he was gone. He didn't leave a note, a message, or any explanation. Of course, I panicked. I tried calling and messaging him, but he didn't respond. Worse, his phone was off the entire day. I asked his family, but they had no idea either. When I tried contacting his friends, none of them answered. At first, I thought he had gotten cold feet and run away, but as time went on, I started thinking that maybe something bad had happened to him. I was on the verge of reporting him missing when, very late at night, around 4 a.m., I finally discovered what had really happened and why he had disappeared. He didn't even have the decency to inform me himself. I found out when one of his friends posted a bunch of photos on Instagram. They were partying at a bar. Luckily for me, they tagged the bar in their stories and posts. When I looked up the place online, I realized they were in Spain. I was furious because he was getting drunk with his friends while I was going out of my mind with worry. So, I immediately messaged him, telling him that I knew where he was. I also told him that if he didn't come back on the next flight, the wedding would be canceled. I sent him a long message expressing how disappointed I was with his behavior. He had ignored me all day and didn't even have the courtesy to let me know before leaving for a vacation with his friends. I was livid and didn't bother to hide it in the messages I sent after seeing his friends post. But even then, he didn't respond immediately. I had to wait until the next evening for him to finally call me. That was one of the most disappointing phone calls of my life. When he finally called, instead of deeply apologizing and trying to fix the situation, he made things even worse. That's why I ended up canceling the wedding. When I answered the call, I was very cold with him, and he noticed immediately. Instead of acknowledging what he had done, he got defensive. He told me that his college friends had been planning this for him for a long time and only informed him after everything was paid for. He knew we had already discussed bachelor and bachelorette parties and that I didn't like them. That's why we decided not to have those kinds of parties. But a few days before the trip, when his friends contacted him and told him about it, he felt like he had to go because it would be rude to decline after all the arrangements and payments had been made. He had known about this 3 days before the trip but didn't tell me. That upset me even more. Of course, I started yelling at him over the phone about his behavior. But even then, he didn't seem to feel the slightest remorse and kept defending himself. He said he knew that if he discussed it with me, I wouldn't agree, which is why he felt he had to hide it and go anyway. Supposedly, although I don't know if it's true or not, he tried to contact me the day after arriving in Spain, but his phone wasn't working. Afterward, he forgot because he was having so much fun with his friends. It was crazy how something as important as informing me about his whereabouts could simply slip his mind, especially when he was doing something so wrong. For some reason, he just couldn't understand that what he had done was not okay. He kept defending himself, saying that he'd been with me since he was 18 years old and deserved to have some kind of life experiences, whatever that means, before finally settling down with me. I had no idea what he was talking about, and after a certain point, I became extremely upset. I told him I wanted him to come back on the next flight and that if he didn't, our relationship would be over and there would be no wedding. He responded that he wasn't going to come back on the next flight because he and his friends had paid for a 2-week vacation and would only return a few days before the wedding. He also told me I just had to deal with it. Before I could even respond, he hung up the call. When I tried calling him back, he didn't answer. I was so angry that I kept sending him messages for 2 more days until I finally gave up. Clearly, partying with his friends was more important to him than his fiancé or even his own wedding, something we had been planning for months. I even told his family everything. From what I know, they tried to contact him and convince him to return, but he wouldn't respond to them either. So eventually, I did what I had to do. I canceled the wedding. I didn't make any formal announcement. I simply contacted all the guests and sent them a message saying the wedding had been canceled. I also made sure to tell them not to talk to Marcus about it and explained exactly why I was canceling the wedding. I spoke to the vendors, dealt with cancellation fees, and planned to recover the money from Marcus later. But the most important thing for me was to teach him a lesson, and I think that's where I may have gone wrong. Both sets of parents weren't happy with what I did. They wanted me to at least talk to him, wait for him to return, and then have a conversation. But I wasn't willing to do that because I was too angry and hurt. Just to clarify, we had never had issues like this in our relationship. Like any couple, we sometimes argued over small things, but they were insignificant. and we always found a solution. That's why we had been together for almost 6 years. I had never felt too young to get married or uncertain about him. I thought he felt the same way, but when he told me he wanted to have life experiences before settling down with me, I felt very betrayed. I felt like maybe I had overreacted. A couple of days ago, he finally returned from his trip and came straight to my house, but I refused to let him in. He arrived in the afternoon, and I didn't even open the door. I told him from inside to leave. We argued a bit, and he told me I couldn't do this to him because we were supposed to get married in a few days. He said all the arrangements had already been made, so I should talk to him and work things out instead of acting immaturely. That's when I gave him the news. I opened the door because I wanted to see his face and told him the wedding had been canceled. He had no right to act surprised because I had told him exactly what I would do if he didn't come back soon. I simply followed through with what I said. He was in shock, and I could see he was very affected. Within seconds, he started crying and telling me that after being together for so long, I couldn't just leave him over something like this. He started apologizing over and over, saying he was willing to do whatever it took to make it up to me, but I had to marry him. It was very hard for me, but I knew I couldn't forgive him. So I just closed the door. He kept crying and begging me to talk to him for about 20 minutes before finally leaving. I know he's now staying with his parents and is completely devastated about what happened. That's why I feel so guilty. His parents have been in contact with me and told me he doesn't want to eat or leave his room. The only thing he asks is whether I've agreed to talk to him. They don't say it outright, but I can tell from their tone that both his parents and mine think I acted too hastily and maybe a bit harshly in handling the situation. After yesterday, I've started questioning it myself. Aside from the college friends who went on the trip with him, all the guests received a message from me informing them about the wedding's cancellation and the reasons behind it. Most people didn't reply except to console me, but I know some, who were close to Marcus, took the liberty of forwarding him my message despite me asking them not to talk to him about it. When they did, he didn't take it seriously because he thought they were joking and trying to scare him into coming back. Now, of course, he regrets everything he did. He has been sending messages to everyone, saying he's very sorry because he knows he let everyone in his life down, especially me. Since I have him blocked, he can't contact me directly, so he's been asking others to pass along his messages. All those messages are apologies. He tells me how much I meant to him and how much he would hate to lose me forever. He says he still wants to marry me and doesn't care if we don't have the wedding we had planned. He just wants to be with me and knows he made a huge mistake. He says he'll never do anything like this again. I'm summarizing because it would be too much to copy and paste all those messages, but people have been forwarding them to me. For some reason, I feel very guilty about this, especially after yesterday. As I said at the beginning, I was supposed to get married yesterday. When I woke up, it hit me hard to realize that day should have been my wedding. But now everything is ruined. A nearly 6-year relationship ended just like that, out of nowhere. Of course, something like that is very hard to accept. On top of that, I had so many people flooding my phone with consolation messages. Some were still sending apologies on Marcus's behalf, and most just had nothing useful to add to the conversation. So they would write random messages just to say hello or something like that. But I felt so empty. It felt like my entire world had been turned upside down in a matter of days, which it had. I was already struggling to deal with everything emotionally. I decided I would try to talk to my parents to clear my thoughts. But when I went to see them, I could tell they were also very affected because they were quite emotionally involved in all this. Naturally, Marcus and I had been together for almost 6 years and had practically grown up together since we were 19, so it's a big blow for everyone involved. I thought my parents were going to comfort me and tell me I did the right thing, but instead, when I tried to talk to them about what was happening, at first, they didn't say anything. Finally, they told me they didn't think I did the right thing. When they said that, I felt like my world was falling apart. I was already having a lot of doubts about what I had done, and for my parents, of all people, to say they didn't agree with what happened was the last thing I needed to hear. Since then, I've been in a very strange mental state and can't stop questioning myself. I haven't even found the energy or mental capacity to talk to my friends about this. Finally, I found this place here. I don't know who else to turn to at this point, and really need completely impartial opinions because I'm very lost. So, am I the bad one for canceling my wedding after my fiancé left for an impromptu bachelor trip 2 weeks before our wedding and refused to come back when I asked him to? Update 1. Thank you to everyone who commented on my post. It's been 4 days since I wrote, and I've been reflecting a lot on what happened and what you all wrote. I've really read and considered it. I spoke to my parents about what they said and told them it really hurt me. I didn't think it was fair for them not to be on my side and console me. Instead, they made me feel like I was the bad one and that I had overreacted. I mean, After sharing my story here, almost everyone in the comments was outraged on my behalf, so I really don't think I did anything wrong. As my parents, they should be the first to understand. They listened when I talked to them, but still, they didn't seem to get it. They told me they only said what they felt, and there lies the problem. I can't understand how they feel I'm the one who's wrong here. My fiancé literally went on a vacation with his friends without even informing me, and then refused to come back when I asked him to. I think that's a big deal. It's not like I didn't warn him about the consequences. He knew I would cancel the wedding if he didn't do what I asked. I don't even think my demands were that unreasonable, especially considering we were supposed to get married. So after all this, how can I be wrong? It's baffling to me that my parents don't seem to understand. They keep telling me they understand I'm upset, but that it's still a very insignificant reason to cancel a wedding and end a nearly 6-year relationship. It wasn't easy for me to do it either, and the least they could do is be supportive. But they don't even seem willing to do that. I've tried talking to them about this a couple of times, and each time we end up fighting. Now, I don't think I'll keep trying to talk to them or make them understand my point of view. If they don't understand, I don't think there's anything else I can do. They can keep thinking I'm the bad one here, but I know what I did and why I had to do it. Life has already gotten very hard for me in the last few weeks, so I don't need them contributing to that. Aside from them, I've also had to talk to a couple of other people, mainly friends who were forwarding all the messages Marcus wanted me to receive. As politely as I could, I explained to them that I was already going through a very tough time and didn't need them to keep sending me the messages Marcus wanted to get to me. It was just making everything harder for me emotionally. I asked them to stop sending those messages because I didn't want to read them. I don't even care if I seem insensitive or whatever. I just wanted the whole situation to stop. Most people stopped after that and told me they were very sorry for forwarding the messages. They said they felt bad for Marcus but would respect what I wanted and stay out of it. That was most people. But a couple of mutual friends started attacking me after I sent that message. They called me selfish and said I was destroying a relationship just out of pride. These people have known me for quite some time, so if that's really what they think of me, I have nothing to say to them. If my own parents can misunderstand me, I don't think I have the right to expect anything from my so-called friends. When they started attacking me and trying to emotionally manipulate me, I didn't even bother arguing with them or trying to make them understand my point of view. I had already learned my lesson with my parents, so I just blocked them and decided to move on with my life. I know that right now, everyone thinks Marcus is the victim in this situation, and that I'm the controlling, insensitive one who left him just because he refused to come back from a trip on my terms. It's very surprising that even after knowing the whole story, there are still people who feel sorry for him. As far as I can remember, I mentioned every detail in the message I sent people explaining why the wedding was canceled. I guess I'll never understand these things, but oh well. It doesn't matter anymore. What's important is that the relationship is over and I'm not going to marry this guy. I've started trying to make peace with that fact, and it's better if everyone around me tries to do the same. Update 2. It's been 2 weeks since I last spoke to my parents. Since our last argument, my parents haven't tried to contact me, and I'm not bothered by it. If they can't understand my perspective by now, there's nothing more I can do about it. Most of the other people who had been forwarding me messages from Marcus have either given up or been blocked, so that's resolved. But a couple of days ago, surprisingly, the friends he went on the trip with reached out to me out of the blue. Of course, I had already blocked all of them at the same time I blocked Marcus because I didn't want anything to do with them. After that, they hadn't tried to contact me, probably because they didn't have the nerve to do so. Until now, I guess. Anyway, they reached out by writing me an email saying they were really sorry for everything that happened. They said they realized they shouldn't have made such a rushed plan and involved Marcus. Instead, they said they probably should have given him good advice, rather than encouraging him to ignore what I had said and keep enjoying the trip with them. I don't know if they were really apologizing or digging an even deeper hole for him. When I realized that they had actively encouraged him not to return when I asked him to and to ignore me, I felt even worse about the situation. I don't care what they said or did, I just found it pathetic that Marcus, as an adult, let himself be influenced to end up in a situation like this. That's how he ended up ruining everything we had for a stupid trip. He's not a teenager who had to give in to peer pressure, he knew what he was doing. This made me so angry that I didn't even bother reading the rest of the email. I deleted it immediately. I didn't care about their apology because I knew the rest of the message would be the same old speech, asking me to forgive him, or at least talk to him or whatever. I didn't need to hear that from them. If they were truly his friends, they would have cared about his relationship and advised him to do the right thing. They didn't, so I don't need to see or read anything they have to say now. Besides, it's too late. I've already started trying to move on and have accepted that the relationship is over. There's no way I'm getting back with Marcus. The last thing I needed to do was let him know when he could come by to collect his things, and that would be the final closure I needed. I had been waiting for some time because I didn't feel ready, but last night, I finally contacted his parents and told them he could come by any afternoon this week to pick up his things. They tried to get me to talk to him while I was on the phone, but I hung up before that could happen. As I said, this was the last step I needed to complete to finally start moving on. Now that I've done it, I don't think I'll ever need to speak to him again. I'm ready. This is over. Update 3. Marcus finally came to pick up his things. I knew it was going to be hard, so I had already mentally prepared myself for the worst. Luckily, it wasn't actually that bad. I contacted his parents almost 10 days ago, letting them know he could come any afternoon that week to collect his belongings. But of course, it took more than a week for him to finally show up. In the meantime, his college friends probably realized I hadn't even read their email and started trying to message me from a disposable phone. They skipped all the nonsense from before and went straight to the point in their messages, telling me that Marcus really missed me and was willing to do whatever it took to fix our relationship. All I had to do, according to them, was simply talk to him. They were literally begging me on his behalf, but I blocked them again. After trying to call me from several numbers for a couple of days, they finally stopped trying. For the past 5 days, I haven't heard from anyone. Then, yesterday afternoon, Marcus's parents called me and told me he would be coming today to pick up his things. Surprisingly, they even apologized for everything that went wrong and told me they wished things could have been resolved differently. They said, that's how life is and we all have to deal with it. That was shocking to hear. I guess maybe Marcus finally changed his mind about trying to win me back and had accepted what was happening. I felt a bit bad about it because this meant things were really coming to an end. But this is exactly what I wanted from the beginning, so I accepted it. He came a couple of hours ago with his dad. I stayed in the guest room instead of the living room so I wouldn't have to see much of them while they packed his things. It took them about an hour and a half to finish completely because, of course, we had been living together for the past 4 years. That meant we had a lot of shared belongings. When they were finally done, his dad left the two of us to talk privately because I had asked for it. I didn't have anything specific in mind to say. I just wanted to say goodbye and have that closure, I guess. So that's what I did. It was very awkward, and he started crying. He told me he was very sorry that things had to end this way and that he wished he had been a better partner. But, as his parents said, that's life, and it's too late to change it. Seeing him cry made me start tearing up too, which I didn't want. So we quickly hugged, wished each other the best for the future, and then he left. When he was finally gone, I ended up crying for an hour before I could calm down. But I needed it. I needed to see him one last time and end things on a note that wasn't as bitter as the last time we spoke. Of course, it's still not a happy ending, but it's not as terrible as I expected. I wouldn't say I'm happy now, but at least I'm glad I got some closure. Everything hurts right now, but I know it's not the end of the world. I'm still pretty young and have a lot to look forward to in life. I guess I'll focus on my work, try to keep myself distracted from everything that went wrong, and just move on in general. Update 4. It feels very strange to post an update almost a year after the wedding that never happened. Looking back, I think it was the right decision because I'm much better off now. At first, it was very hard for me. I wasn't on good terms with my parents, and of course, the person I had practically decided to spend the rest of my life with was no longer in my life. My mental health really suffered. But with the help of some good friends, I started to get back on track. I started going to the gym, working hard, and partying just as hard. I also started therapy a couple of months after the breakup. Since then, I've made a lot of progress. Although I wouldn't say I'm completely healed, I'm definitely handling everything much better now. My parents and I still haven't spoken. In fact, they've even blocked me everywhere. I guess they're too proud to admit I made the right decision for myself, but that's okay. I no longer expect better from anyone. And honestly, I don't care anymore. Marcus and I also hadn't spoken, and I had kept him blocked. But interestingly, we ran into each other at a restaurant a couple of weeks ago. We hadn't seen each other in a long time, and it was very awkward because he was with his coworkers and I was with my friends. Honestly, I was considering leaving when he walked over to my table and said hi. He made an effort to be nice to me, and I did the same. It was a surprisingly pleasant interaction. That's why I'm writing this update now, because I remembered how bad I was around this time last year. But now I feel quite content with the life I have. Update 5. I wasn't sure whether to make this update or not, given how much time has passed. My wedding would have been over 18 months ago, so it doesn't affect me as much anymore. If you haven't read my previous update, I ran into Marcus, and we had a cordial conversation. However, I recently found something out, and I think it's worth sharing here. Marcus was unfaithful to me during his bachelor party. This doesn't change anything at this point. It doesn't make me angry or sad since we're no longer together. But I do feel relieved because if I had married him, I'd be dealing with a divorce now. Just the fact that he left without telling me and ignored me was bad enough. So finding out this new information only reinforces that I made the right decision. For the curious, Marcus was with a woman who was part of a group they met during the trip. The worst part is that other friends of his who were also in relationships were on the trip and are now facing their own issues. This perfectly sums up why I dislike bachelor parties. If you need to say goodbye to being single by doing this kind of thing, you probably shouldn't be getting married and should be honest with your partner. I know some comments had speculated that he might have been unfaithful during the trip, so there's your answer.